Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful back in the studio today, working on a slow stitch project that I had put aside for about 5 months. So I'm going to just add this to the playlist. I think this is episode 15. I will put a link down below in the description so that if you are just seeing this for the first time and want to start back at the very beginning, you go ahead and start on episode 1. So there'll be a link down below. I haven't worked on this in 5 months. I haven't done a video in over 3 months. So life has just been happening all over the place and I haven't been able to do this in a while. So I'm kind of out of practice, but we'll see how this goes. If you're just joining me for the very first time, welcome. If you do enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe in the little bell so that you will know when I do post another video. If you're just joining me in this series, what I'm working on are some slow stitch spine covers. So I had done this journal, was my first one, and then I just, did a lot of fun stuff just to make it have a fun decorative spine cover. And I really liked how this one was turning out. There is a series where I show what I'm working on the insides of these, and I'll have to see if that's a separate playlist. Put that in case you're interested in that. But I will be, continuing on these. It'll take me forever, but I do like to share as I'm kind of learning and figuring out some new things. So I had started these 2 smaller versions using the same cover. This is printed fabric. Same with my spine covers. I have lots of videos on those, so if you just check out my channel, you'll see that I organize by playlist, and maybe you'll find these and see how I did the covers and made the books and that sort of thing. So I'll try to find it and link a playlist below. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've even been doing this. So I've got my little felt mat here with a lot of mess on it, so I'll set these aside for right now. I had these 2, like I said, videos on where I left off, and I've done quite a bit since the last videos, so let me kind of get in here a little closer. And I just wanted to, kind of do an up close and personal what I've used to create the different editions since the last video. So this one I worked on first, and I had done the flower, the rose, with some applique and stitching. And then I wanted to start adding some other embellishments. Sometimes the order that I do things is different depending on how the project is speaking to me. And if I do get kind of a creative block, I'll just put it aside. And that's what happened with these. I knew I wanted to do a lot on them. They were going to take a lot of time, and I wanted to enjoy what I was doing. So I set it aside. I picked it up again a week or so ago, and I'm enjoying it again. The focal point was actually printed on this fabric. So the applique fabrics and things kind of went on top of what was already pictured there. And that kind of made it easy. But then, from there, I want to go and I want to add different layers that kind of move things forward and into the background. So I added, this is just a little piece of burlap fabric. And you can see I kind of did just a little cross stitch sort of design to stitch that down because, burlap frays quite a bit. And then I layered on a piece of lace on the top of that and stitched it on just with some running stitch, straight stitch, kind of with leaving a little space in between, and did that, I think, in the same color here, and maybe a line that's under that you can't see now under this vine. And then it looks like I did maybe a different color here. When I don't really know where I'm going with something, I kind of just pick up whatever little threads are laying on my table, and that will just help me decide what color I want to use when I don't have a real direction. And that's kind of what happened here. I was just taking little scraps of whatever I had to kind of get these elements stitched down. This little bit here is just a piece of this little silk fabric. And so I just tore off a little strip just to bring in another little piece of something. I wanted to get a little bit more going on here to kind of take I want this to be the focal point, but I want it balanced with the rest of the piece. The other thing that I always kind of pay attention to is how it's going to go on my spine. So I keep my book handy. That way I can kind of lay it here, and it'll help me decide maybe what and where I need something else. So I always like it to, I kind of work on it this way, but you know, you're only seeing a section of it. So you kind of want to pay attention and make sure there's interest if it's just laying this way. So I wanted to create a new focal point, even though this is over the whole piece, just for this front part. Same with here. I wanted to add something up here to kind of even out all of this, since you're not seeing the whole flower, you know, in its entirety. And then the same with the back. I needed to create something kind of up here, because really this is the only part you're seeing are the leaves on the bottom. So you kind of need to create another focal point sort of thing up top where there wasn't anything. So that's kind of how I approached this one. For my little bit that I was going to see up top here, I took a little piece of vintage stretchy lace, like from lingerie, and then this is just a piece of fabric that I've stamped the word bonjour on, and then just kind of picking a different color and stitching that on those two pieces. And I may add some more, you know, beading or flowers or something, but this was just sort of my next step, was to get some things appliqued on the void space that I had. The other thing I did is, in the print of the fabric, it was a collage itself. So there was one color block here, and then this was another color block. So I kind of had this natural line where the two colors changed. And so I just added a little different color, a little stitch, little plus marks there, just to kind of break that up. And then I carried it down. That color changed when I hold it back. You can kind of see there was a stripe here where that color changed. So I actually carried that little thing all the way down as if it goes behind the leaves. So I just did it in the spaces. And then on this side, as far as my applique goes, I used a piece of this vintage trim that is really pretty but kind of fragile, this little French trim, and just added it kind of like a window in a way, I guess it kind of looks. So I wanted the printed piece had, again, a color block of blue here that kind of went around. So I offset this, but then I wanted to kind of frame that little blue section that was on the printed background fabric. And so I just did a little vine there. I did some in some kind of tans, a light tan for maybe the straight line frame, and then used a little darker color. I don't know if you can even see this up close. Where it's like a vine would weave around that frame. Did that, and then also some little green leaves, if you can see those. And then started with the larger flowers that are just a lazy daisy stitch, and then adding another little color inside. And that actually I think is either the same blue or a very close blue. And then some little French knots for the centers, and then to look like some new buds coming out kind of thing, and then just some clear glass beads. So that kind of decorated that whole piece up. As far as stitching this on, I really used just a similar color to this kind of salmon rosy pink, so that you don't really see how it's stitched on. But because it was so fragile, I really needed to put a lot of stitches in that. So that's kind of where I'm at on here. Because that frame went around down here, I did the same thing and kind of made it like it was going through this the stem and leaves of this flower. And then on this, I'm actually still working on this a little bit. I just picked another, blue. And when I should back up a bit. When I am kind of collecting the threads that I want to use, like I did in this piece, I kind of took all the colors, which are kind of muted, that were already in the printed fabric. And then I like to start pulling in maybe some colors that aren't there. And that's kind of where I am now. So I just have a bag here of, that way I can kind of have this be mobile. And I just take the colors and even these little bits of fabric and lace and things that I might want to use. And I just put them in a bag and put the threads that I want to use on these rings. That way I don't have to keep going to my big box. And then I kind of have at least a grouping, and I have, you know, these are from one box, from another box, that kind of thing. So I kind of keep them organized, sort of, and then I can keep pulling for both of these pieces. So I grabbed just kind of a random color that wasn't in there, and that was this kind of little lavender thread, and started adding more in between the vine to look like other little bits. So I have some beads in there also, and kind of the same threads I used here are here. That way I've used them in 3 places. So I've kind of used them on the back. They are here a little bit on the spine, and then the same colors are kind of here on the front. So I kind of try to always keep that in mind, that I'm doing it throughout my piece, where you'll see it on each of the 3 sides of the book. One thing, as far as the stitching, I don't think I did anything in here really unusual at all. They're all just very basic. The one thing I did figure out, and that's just kind of new to me playing around, is, 2 things I did. On this, these little green patches, I don't know if you can see that they're kind of loose. I wanted some leaves, but I was kind of tired of doing just the little, you know, lazy daisy kind of stitch leaf. So I grabbed some of this. The end of this was green, and it was a nice color. And so I just ripped up some of this silk and then just kind of bunched it up and tacked it on with a green thread, if you can see that. The fabric is actually like maybe a little bit bigger of a piece and then folded, so it kind of has some dimension to make kind of these tatty little leaves. So I did that. And then the one stitch that I really like, that is like doing French knots, I like to do a variety of French knots, different number of threads, different number of wraps, give you different sizes, and they can all be very inconsistent. One of the things that I like about a colonial knot is that it is very consistent looking, each knot. And so it's fun, and you get really fast at it. But the one thing I did different is I like to vary things up, you know, in size sometimes. I actually did a couple where I wrapped it twice, and I was going to show you that. So let me see if I can get in here closer. It kind of just gave it a little variation on it. So I don't know if you can, let's get in here. This is better. If you can see from here that this one and this one are larger than all of these others. Okay, so a colonial knot is kind of the figure 8. So you come under with your needle, and then you want to wrap your needle over the top, and then you go back down, and I kind of pull this tight, not too tight. If you do get it too tight, you can kind of twist your needle and get it through, and that makes your colonial knot, your normal colonial knot. This would probably show up better on a solid color, but you get the idea. Okay, so to do the variation, I would do the same knot. I'm just going to do one right next to it if I'm in frame here. Only this time I'm going to go under once, and then I'm just going to wrap it over twice. And that gave me that little floppy top part. And again, how loose you do it will also change how it looks. So that just made that knot a little bit bigger. You can see, let's see if I get the lighting better, where I have this one. And you kind of can't see the other one that I did now because it got buried under my, there it is. So that was just kind of a fun way to do a knot that I really enjoy making and make it have a size difference in the same color. So I'll continue some of those. I may add in another little color if I want to this, if I'm feeling like it's overall, if I want it to have a little more color on the piece. But I'm really liking, this one's really close to finished, I have a feeling. But we'll see. Once I get to working on something, then I kind of put it aside and then want to come back and add more. So that one's close. Let me take that off in case I need it. And this one, then I picked up after. And where I had left off on this one is I had taken this metallic thread, which I hate using. It's just so difficult to work with. But I wanted to outline the folds in her gown. And I did that, but once that wasn't enough. And I wish I had a picture. I guess if you look on my Instagram or in the last video, you'll see how it looked with some of this done and then without this other stitching. It really kind of made it look odd and unfinished. And when I don't have a plan going forward, which is the truth, I'm just telling you the truth, I don't always have a plan for what I want this to look like in the end. Some elements I do kind of have an idea, like this vine that I'm working on now. I did have an idea about this from the beginning just because of the positioning of her hands. But other than that, the dress, I really initially didn't think I wanted to put this much time and work into it. I could have appliqued another fabric, you know, in those shapes, would have been fun, but I didn't do that. So once I had the outline, it was very unfinished. I was basically highlighting a bunch of folds that didn't really pop off the page. So what I needed to do was bring her dress forward again. So I did all of these little stitches, and I think these are colonial knots in here, just to kind of fill in with the same color, but just to give it some texture to bring it forward. And then the same with the kind of wine color, mauve-y wine color. In the actual print of the fabric, these two were darker than this one just because of shading and that sort of thing. And then this one over here was really small. So I thought I want to keep that shading difference. You can kind of see when I pull it back. It's really the same part of the dress, but it's just some are lighter and some are darker. So to achieve that or keep that in my stitching, I took a kind of a brown color, like a tree bark kind of color, to make my cross pieces that are kind of a basket weave. And then I cross stitched over the top to kind of tack them down with a different color, with the wine color. Getting the shading to stay the way I wanted it to, I used multiple, I think 2 or 3 strands for the brown, and then 1 strand to tack them down. And then because this one is obviously lighter, I just used 1 strand of the brown and 1 strand of the wine color to tack them down. So just in changing, I think this one might have had 3 strands for the brown. This one had 2 strands for the brown, and this one had 1 strand for the brown. So it kind of gave me that gradient in color. And then this one I had was also darker. But that was just kind of one way to achieve, if you're trying to keep your color from looking just flat, just to give it more shade and light, is to vary the number of the strands, even though you're using the same exact colors. And then for this part of the dress, there were a lot of folds and movement in the dress. And to keep that where you kind of could feel the flowiness of it, I just did little straight stitches, and I kind of followed the direction and just kind of echoed that throughout a section, and then turned it where it turned in the actual picture. So hopefully it kind of kept some movement in that part of the dress. So I'm happy with that, because it really, I had already done all of this part, and so that was already brought forward. but I really needed to do something with the dress. I had already done these patches on the background of the dress, had some flowers kind of printed on it. And I just didn't want to just take every element that was already in the picture and just embroider over it. I didn't want to do that. So adding these patches kind of give it more of that kind of haphazard, slow stitching thing. And I don't know, I may add some flowers on top of these pieces. I did add a couple little flowers and beads here. I think I had actually done that when I did the outlining. And then I had already added this lace at the bottom, but now I have put kind of a garland vine along the bottom of her dress. And that was already sort of pictured there. I didn't follow the picture exactly. I just used it for inspiration. But I wanted to kind of bring that wine color that I'm calling it kind of down here. Just to, again, try to kind of balance the color over the whole page. And then, again, I need to pay attention to the center and then the front and then the back side. So let me get that book and just kind of see where we are, and I'll show you what else I've added then. So that's how she's looking there, which is nice because you kind of see that it's a person. Then the other thing that I had to add, because her dress now was kind of standing out forward, but her face was not at all. And I had added this crown already, so I really kind of needed to bring her out in some way. And so my idea was to do her hair. I won't do all her features. I think I'll leave her this way. But I used some bullion stitch to do her curls. And I really like how that turned out. And then for the front, I needed to start kind of working on what's it gonna look like here, because now all you see is her hand and part of her dress and a chandelier, which kind of, you know, I don't know that that makes sense so much for the front cover of my book. So I originally had some different ideas about the chandelier. I did go ahead and use my clear glass beads, the little seed beads, and just went along where the chain would be of the chandelier. And it also goes down here. You can kind of see those lines. I may carry that through there, but then it had these horizontal lines. There's kind of one here too that I didn't do. And I just took some of that kind of dark tree bark color that I had here and just did some cross stitches just to kind of highlight what would be the frame of the chandelier. And then it has all these like little glass things in the picture. But I think what I want to do more is get a little more whimsical with it and not make it a chandelier so much as maybe doing some winding some vine and flowers here. So I might make it more like the frame holding a flower arrangement of some kind. So that's my idea for here. The other thing that I kind of from the beginning had thought I might want to do, just because of the way her hand is, I had thought I would have her holding some flowers, but I like the idea of winding a vine through her arm, kind of around that she's holding a garland. And on this back side, I really needed to do that because I intentionally, you know, don't really want it to look like a person everywhere. And so I had put patches, put a patch over where her arm was here. And so when you look at it this way, you don't necessarily see that it's even a person in a dress. So for this side, I really do want to add in something more whimsical. So I'm not sure how this will end up down here. That'll be to come as I go. But I am working on doing a vine, and I'll add leaves and more flowers and that sort of thing. So the vine is going to kind of come through here and then come down here through this arm with flowers and things here. So I don't have to do as much on the back. It's the back of the book, but I probably will do a little more than just that. So we'll see. We'll see when I get to that point. But that's where I am. I have enjoyed working on this again. They do take a lot of time. And so for me, because I know I'm going to be gluing this to a journal that I'm going to sell, I don't really want to add up the hours and hours and hours I have in my head, because then it makes it hard for me to sell them. So it's nice to put it away for a while and then come back to it, because by the time I'm finished, you know, I'll be happy with it, hopefully, and happy to pass it on to somebody else. So that's where I am. Again, I will try to get working on the insides and do another video there and just kind of see where I am. I have started working on jewelry again. I had not done that in a while, but that will be very intermittent. So I may pop a few of those videos in from time to time. So that's where I am today. I am going to get back to work and see what I can come up with next. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.